Oh, everybody knows this is popping up on Facebook.
Mike, we won't tell anybody.
People are seeing it. It's leaving a little trail of little videos here and there of us being frustrated. Oh,
that's why it's just the preview.
And my face is on it. That's the trouble.
Yeah. Well, it's all my fault. Everybody that's seeing this, it's all my fault. I assure you, it's my fault.
I'm going to tell everybody. I'm telling them now. I'm going to tell them, if you see me all over the place for 17 seconds, Kravitz did it.
Well, look at that. Huh. Wow, this is now it's gone past frustrating. I'm telling you what, we're going to share it on my own timeline. And no, I can't do that. My God. Share to your page. Let's just hope this is the right one. My goodness. That's why I'm trying really hard not to swear. This is my normal proclivity would be to blue streak right now. Third time's a charm, they say.
Oh, it says it's streaming live on my screen, but it just says Facebook. It doesn't say which page on Facebook.
I know. All right, now I see the correct logo. We are in the right place at the well, almost the right time. It says live, and I'm not seeing how to. All right, well, it's fine by me. All right, guys, we're live. You can start over again. Al, say a couple words about our show, if you will.
Good morning, folks. This is Al Byrne, and I'm here speaking for Veterans Voices with my co-host, Mike Kravitz. And today our guest is David Bass, and we'll introduce David in a moment. But the intention of this show is to show up on time, and I know we're late, about 10 o'clock every other Sunday on Veterans Voices. And we hope the name speaks for itself. We want to bring veterans on and let them tell us about their experiences, specifically with the cannabis plant. Now, I say veterans, that's anybody that's been in the service, male, female. We don't care what conflict or lack of conflict was involved. The audience should understand that we'll also bring in caregivers, loved ones, friends, kids, wives, husbands that have a contributing episode to give us or to give us their take on what they saw their loved one or their friend go through. And then we'd like to feature especially vets that have been active in the cannabis education area. This would include activists and advocates. There's a difference. Some can be both, of course. And we'd like to find out how they're doing, success or lack thereof, and the techniques they're using to educate the population that they serve and to educate the legislators that make the laws, which are now, to all of our minds, would just beyond comprehension, while cannabis nationally isn't available to everybody in the country, let alone veterans. But we'll get into that. So every other Saturday, we're going again, every other Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, Veterans Voices with Al Byrne and Mike Kravitz. And I'll let Mike take the show right now.
Thanks, Al. I have to get that hearty good morning Sunday cough out. I have a couple of things to say just as an intro here. First, about Texas generally. Texas is really close to my heart in the activism that I've gotten to be part of since I got started in the mid 1990s. I got to be part of a really special event that was sort of a takeoff on what we were doing in Florida with this journey for justice that we did with patients, sometimes in wheelchairs, followed by vans, you know, crawling across the state of Florida. We did a sort of a modified version of that with RVs, with big banners from all our different organizations. So picture RVs and a jail cell being towed by a truck, all with pot banners, you know, big 4 foot wide pot leaves on the banners from NORML or community coalitions and Cannabis Action Network, and et cetera, all over the sides of these RVs, going across from Texas prison to prison, and then coming back to Austin to circle the Capitol with a huge rally and march. And we had a plane that was flying around then Governor George W. Bush's office with a banner that said the war on drugs is lost, going around and around and around his office there at the Capitol. And we were so tired after this journey, we handed over the microphone to the folks from Tulia. And Tulia folks talked on the microphone, and I think it really helped them get national attention and really bring some repairs, over needed repairs to a community that had been ravaged by the war on drugs and a particular out of control narcotics officer. But that time, that's where I got to meet Richard Lee's mom. You know, Richard Lee from Oaksterdam, and met his mom there. She was serving food at one of the Unitarian Universalist churches there on our route, and it was just a beautiful memory. And I really have that special place in my heart for Texas, always will.
What year was that, Michael?
You know, I can't even tell you off the top of my head. It's easy to find. Obviously, the Journey for Justice Texas is be all you needed to type into Google to find out. We had a writer from High Times on staff. We had a on-staff attorney. Kevin Zeese was riding along with us, an on-staff attorney. The governor was given a hands-off warning to all the state police, but there was one sheriff that didn't get the call, and he had veins popping out all down his neck while he was pointing at us, trying to tell us to pull over. And we finally stopped, and a state policeman pulled him back aside, and you could see them still with his veins and pointing like this while he's talking to the state policeman. And then finally he kicked sand a few times and went back to his car, and they all left us alone again. That was an amazing journey. But yeah, I want to thank you, David, for coming on. You know, as an organization, we work nationally, but we only work in states where we're basically needed or we're invited. And then there are states that we don't work in at all. And then there's states that are very special to us where we feel like they have it under control, where the local activists have a bead on things, and we just sort of monitor what they're doing. That's I think a very special thing, because there just aren't that many states really where you have the local activists really have things managed and you know, are sort of driving the engine instead of the national organizations like Marijuana Policy Project or Drug Policy Alliance or whatever sort of running the show. At least that's my perspective. Hopefully it'll align with yours, but I am very much in appreciation and respect for everything that you've done. David Bass has been our focal point and our contact in Texas, and has really, I think, done a super job of what you've been able to accomplish down there in hard turf. I worked in Virginia for many years. I think Virginia and Texas, in some ways, I think, again, hopefully what you say will align, and that sort of works out. So without any further ado, please, Dave, the way we usually work this sort of in a timeline, but it's up to you. It's open format, but if you wanted to kind of start out, you know, where you came from, how you sort of got into the military, your rank and your jobs and stuff are of great interest to me, in where you fit into the schema of our veteran stakeholder group on cannabis. So feel free to start wherever you like and talk about what got you into this stuff, David.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say is thanks for having me on here today. This is really fantastic to talk to y'all. And the reason is that back in 2012, when I had reached the end of my rope with those pills that the VA and the doctors were giving me, and I had discovered the concept of medical cannabis, Al Byrne and Michael Krawitz were two of the very first veterans I discovered on the internet. I was amazed because I felt all alone. I was discovering what medical cannabis was about, but I didn't know any other veterans who used medical cannabis or knew anything about it. And so I found Michael and Al on the internet doing things, making things happen and talking about medical cannabis. And so y'all probably don't know this, but y'all were two of the very first veterans who started educating me about medical cannabis and showing me what it meant to be a veteran activist and what we could accomplish. So I really appreciate that. So y'all have always been my heroes, the two of the very first veterans I found talking about medical cannabis and actually doing, activist work. And then my very first action at the Texas State Capitol was after Michael got the VA to write that policy saying that veterans in medical marijuana states would not be have adverse actions taken against them. Me and some other veterans made copies of that. And we went all over the Capitol, making sure that every representative and every senator got a copy of that and an explanation of how significant that was. And that had a big impact on a lot of our legislators to say, well, the Veterans Administration is saying they're not going to take adverse action against these veterans with medical marijuana cards in these states. And so that made a huge impression on a lot of our legislators when they got that in their hands and understood what it was. And we would testify in front of the committees and read from that VA policy. So I really appreciate y'all showing me the way to activism. And then when you got that policy at the VA, Michael, that showed me we can accomplish big things as veterans if we get organized and focused and stay focused on the goal. So I appreciate that. Oh, and the other thing is Ann Lee is still alive and well in Texas. She was one of the very first activists I met in person in 2013 at the Texas Capitol, and her husband was a Navy veteran. And I was getting ready to testify in front of a committee in 2013 on the only marijuana bill we had at the time, which was affirmative defense, that we could just, if we got arrested, we could at least tell the judge we used cannabis as medicine. And Ann Lee and her husband, I was scared, to get up in front of a committee and admit that I was illegally using cannabis. I had this vision in my head that they would say, arrest this man immediately. He's admitting right here to breaking the law. But Ann Lee and her husband encouraged me and said, you don't be afraid. You get up there and tell the truth to these legislators because they need to hear it. So Ann Lee also had a big influence on me, and she received a big award the other night in recognition of her activism in Texas as a very conservative Republican who tells the legislators that they're violating the most core principle of the Republican Party by prohibiting cannabis in Texas, because she reminds them that the core principle of the Republican Party is to keep the government out of our personal lives. She's my hero too, her and her husband.
I just want to say it was cute. I sat next to her at the dinner at the Unitarian Church, and she said, "Oh, you got to meet my son. My son's into marijuana. You got to meet my son." It was just the cutest thing. That's how I met Richard, through his mom. I think that's great.
Yeah, and I got to meet Richard. He was here in Texas several times, so I got to talk to him. That was great. So I joined the Army in 1981. I'd been a drummer in a rock and roll band, and decided that playing drums in bars for the rest of my life was probably a kind of a dead end proposition. And so I had a job, and one of my buddies at the job was like, "Hey man, you should come join my National Guard unit. It's a lot of fun. We go out on the weekends, we shoot guns or out in the woods. We have Jeeps." And I was like, "Damn man, that does sound good." And I decided I wanted to go to college. And so he told me, he said, and the National Guard will give you money to go to college. So I went down to the recruiting station of the Oklahoma National Guard in Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1981, and talked to the recruiter. And he told me a bunch of lies, but about how much I was going to enjoy my time at Fort Benning, because this was an infantry unit. But the part about the college money seemed legit. So I raised my right hand and joined the Oklahoma National Guard in 1981 and went off to Fort Benning to infantry basic and advanced training in the summer of 1981. And the first 2 weeks, I thought I'd made the worst mistake of my life. I was like, I need to get the hell out of here. This is not right for me. But I hung in there, and by the time we got to qualifying on the M16, I grew up with guns, and I shot expert, and my drill sergeants gave me a medal, that little expert badge. And I was like, hey, I already got a medal. I'm a natural. So I actually, after that, I enjoyed it. They're like, next thing we're going to go throw hand grenades at the hand grenade range. And I was like, then we're going to, teach you how to shoot the 50 cal. I was like, man, I'm loving this. So that I came back, I was all fired up, and I was a happy camper after that. I enjoyed being an infantry soldier. And they gave me some college money, and I went over and signed up with ROTC at the University of Tulsa. And then I graduated. I stayed in the National Guard for those 4 years and really enjoyed it. And then went on active duty in 1985 and served from 85 to 2006 as a signal officer in the Signal Corps. I thought they'd make me an infantry officer. That's what I wanted. But they in the Army's infinite wisdom of randomly deciding, how your life is going to be, I ended up in the Signal Corps, and that wasn't bad. Not a bad job. I did that for 21 years and retired in 06. But my last assignment was I was with the 1st Cavalry Division in Iraq in 04-05. And when I came back in 05, I had these weird symptoms that I did not experience when I came back from Desert Storm, because our deployment to Iraq in 04-05 was really tough one. That's when the insurgency broke out. We took a lot of casualties. The division was, fighting every day. I was at Camp Taji with the Division Support Command, and the insurgents, were shooting rockets at us all the time, and IEDs and all that. So when I came back from Iraq, I was having nightmares. I was paranoid. I was, anger outbursts, hypervigilance. I felt like I was still in Iraq all the time, intrusive thoughts. And I didn't know what was going on, but I knew I was getting ready to retire and didn't feel like I should go out into the civilian world like this, because I felt dangerous. I didn't feel like I should be interacting with civilians when I'm in this frame of mind. And so an Army, this is at the mental health clinic at Fort Hood. And I went in and sat down with an Army psychologist and told him what was going on. He said, come on down here. And he took me to an Army psychiatrist, and I told him what was going on. Then they did their little consultation and came back in the room and said, Major Bass, we have diagnosed you with post-traumatic stress disorder. And the psychiatrist gave me a prescription, said, go over there to the hospital and fill this prescription immediately and start taking these pills. And the psychologist said, come back Friday, we're going to do some therapy. And so I was like, damn, I didn't even know what post-traumatic stress disorder was. And that day I started taking those psychotropic pills, and I started doing some therapy sessions with the psychologist. The therapy sessions were okay. They try to, try to help you recognize the symptoms of PTSD and then put yourself in the right frame of mind to deal with it. But man, those pills, they were not good. I didn't like the side effects of those pills from the very beginning. And so, but I stuck with it because I wanted to, be better. And I retired and switched over to the VA, and they, kept giving me the pills. And I was taking opioids for chronic pain from injuries. So there I was, the same old story we've heard a million times, the pills, the opioids, the alcohol from, being immersed in a drinking culture for 25 years. And there I was. And I, at a certain point, I realized this is going to kill me. I'm drinking all this alcohol, taking all these pills. So this is looking like a dead end street. And that's when I started looking for alternatives and discovered, I always say I discovered these two words I'd never seen together before. I knew what marijuana was, but I never knew anything about medical marijuana. And in the course of my, searching around on the internet, I ran across Michael, I ran across Al, and saw that was the first veterans I saw out there talking about it. And I ended up joining Texas NORML in 2012 in Austin to learn more and tell my story, because I started using medical cannabis illegally in 2012. I started off with Mexican dirtweed because that's what I could get, $50 an ounce, and plenty of dirt in the dirtweed. But it had an effect. It was probably, 10% THC, but it had an effect. I could tell, that this effect was happening. And then I got access to actual medical grade cannabis from a person I met who got it from California. And so now I had, medical grade cannabis that you guys were talking about. And I started using it. I had to be careful with it because it was expensive. It was hard to get. Sometimes they'd have it, sometimes they wouldn't. So I would smoke a bowl every evening when my day's work was done. And man, it had an immediate, wonderful impact, especially being able to sleep, relax, not think about a rock. And so then on the weekend I would splurge and smoke 2 bowls. but by the end of 2012, I'd stopped taking the pills, the opioids and the psychotropic pills, because I'd asked my psychiatrist at the VA in Temple when I was contemplating using medical cannabis illegally in Texas. I said, how much longer do I need to take these pills? And he said, oh, we're not even going to discuss you ending your pill regimen, medication, for 2 more years. We'll talk about it in 2 years. I was like, man, I can't handle this for 2 more years. So that's what I made. I was like, okay, I am going to dedicate myself for 1 year to use medical cannabis, use cannabis as medicine. And by the end of 2012, I'd proven that it worked because I had stopped taking the pills, and it helped me stop drinking. And so I joined Texas NORML. And then in 2013, I became the director of veteran outreach for Texas NORML. And in 2014, we started getting veterans organized. We had a medical marijuana seminar at George Washington Carver Library in Austin, and put it out on social media, put it in the paper. We didn't know if anybody would show up, and 85 veterans walked in the door. And I was like, who the hell are these guys? And so I did a roll call, and I started with Iraq and Afghanistan. How many veterans do we have that have served in Iraq and Afghanistan? All these young guys stood up. And then I walked it back, Panama, Bosnia, all the conflicts, and got to Vietnam, and Vietnam veterans stood up. I was like, oh, we got the real guys in the house for sure. And then I said, and everybody applauded too. Those young veterans applauded those Vietnam veterans. because we were honored to have them there with us. And then I said, well, what about Korea? Do we have any Korean veterans? And 2 veterans stood up, and they were veterans of Korea, and they discovered cannabis when they were in Asia. And they had been using cannabis all these years. They both lived outside Austin on land they had bought, and they grew their own all these years. And so what I learned is that veterans in Texas had been passing this knowledge from generation to generation all these years. So that was a fantastic day. We spent the whole day together. A restaurant donated lunch to all the veterans. It was really amazing. And so we got organized, and we marched in the Austin Veterans Day Parade, which is a gigantic parade carrying this big giant banner that said Texas Veterans Support Medical Marijuana. And people walked out onto the street to shake our hands. It was really positive experience. And then in 2015, we started Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana, which is a movement, not an organization. We didn't want to be tied down by organizational rules and all that. It's just we're just a message, and the message is cannabis is good medicine. So if a veteran believes that message and understands that message, then they're a Texas veteran for medical marijuana automatically. And then we started Operation Trapped, and started, it was inspired by veterans in Georgia. I saw on Facebook that these veterans in Georgia had an event, and they got a coffin and they filled it with pill bottles, and invited the media, and that was very moving. And so I contacted them and said, hey, can we use your idea? And they were like, hell yes. And so we collected pill bottles from veterans all over Texas, and they put a message inside each bottle, and to Governor Abbott, saying why that veteran needs to use medical cannabis, and when that, what branch of service and dates of service and combat ops, and put a toy soldier inside each pill bottle to show the soldier is trapped by these pills. And we displayed them at the Capitol and got a fantastic response from the media and the legislators. And then a supporter made us a wooden coffin, old Army style wooden coffin. And we put all the pill bottles in the wooden coffin and displayed that at the Capitol and many other events. And got, tremendous positive response. And so, so that's where we're at, is we have this big movement of veterans all over Texas who support medical marijuana, and we've definitely had an impact. And Michael and Al kind of showed us how to do that, so we appreciate it. And
hey, I got a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I really want to hear more about you guys and what you're doing now, but I want to go back a little bit to a couple of things you said. I think I know the answer, but I want to ask the question. When you were withdrawing, if you will, over that year from your opiates and other stuff, and using cannabis as a supplement or a replacement, I don't know what the right word would be, how was the withdrawal? I mean, was it difficult? Was it what?
Yeah, no, it was gradual. Now the opioids, I weaned myself off of those gradually. The psychotropic medications, I just stopped. Once I got medical grade cannabis, I just stopped that completely. And my experience was stopping those, the doctors say, don't do that. But with cannabis, I was able to do that and felt better immediately. As soon as I stopped taking those pills and was using the cannabis, I didn't have any negative effects from just cold turkey stopping those psychotropic medications. And I've been taking them since 2006 to early 2012. The opioids, since I deal with chronic pain, the cannabis kind of supplemented that. But as time went by and I had more trust in the plant, I just, instead of taking, 3 pills a day, I'd take 2 and then 1 and then 1 every other day, and or when the pain was more acute. But by the end of the year, I had those pills just sitting there in my pill box, unused. So the opioids, I weaned myself off slowly, but the psychotropic pills, I just stopped.
Okay, psychotropic means a chemical that enters the brain, not necessarily psychoactive, but it's psychotropic, just for the audience. The other thing I wanted to know about sleep. Now, Mike and I have heard about sleep hundreds of times. I myself sleep with cannabis every night. I think I've used cannabis to go to sleep every night for the last, 40 years. And boy, do I sleep well. A question I have for you and your sleep. How long do you think you sleep on average? And do you dream?
The cannabis allows me to sleep 7 to 9 hours, really good sleep. And yes, I've heard people say that with cannabis, they don't dream. But I definitely have very vivid dreams, but they're not nightmares. They're just, normal dreams.
Cool. That's good. Yeah. All right. Now let's go where you are now, David, in Texas. I mean, with first of all, the other thing I like to do with people when they're talking about affecting their state government is in all of Mike and I experiences, excuse me, in these various states, there's good guys and bad guys in this issue. There's people that are taking the side of the veteran, and there are people that are still just saying ridiculous stuff. Do you have that kind of a breakout in Texas? And I'd really like to know who the good guys are and the bad guys are.
Well, the good news is in Texas, we're winning at the local level. In 2018, when the war against cannabis was in full effect, police officers arrested 95,000 people in 2018 for possession of cannabis, and 95% of those was 2 ounces or less, personal use amounts for sure. And then last year, those numbers fell all the way down to 45,000. And the reason for that is, number one, we legalized hemp in Texas. That was huge, a big step in Texas. And once we legalized hemp, then law enforcement was forced to test the substance that they confiscated and prove that it actually was cannabis and not hemp, not legal CBD type products. And so at the very same time, we had district attorneys in Austin, Houston, and Dallas and San Antonio saying, we have a lot of problems in law enforcement and arresting these peaceful people who never resist or cause us any trouble for possessing small amounts of cannabis is a waste of time. And so it was a simultaneous, we passed the hemp bill, and then we got these progressive DAs in the big cities that didn't want to arrest people anymore. And basically we've legalized cannabis in Houston and Austin, and to some extent in Dallas and San Antonio, because the fourth quarter of 2020, from October 1st to December 31st in Austin, the number of arrests for marijuana possession was 0. Not a single person in Austin was arrested for possessing cannabis fourth quarter 2020. And so the good news is we're winning at the local level, and the good guys there are city councils, district attorneys, and some police chiefs who are very much on our side to stop arresting people for small amounts of cannabis. So that's really good news. And we expect those numbers are going to go even lower this year in 2021. The bad guys are police officers and district attorneys out in the hinterlands of Texas, out in West Texas, trying to catch people bringing cannabis from Colorado, in East Texas, North Texas, and of course, South Texas along the border. And so out there, district attorneys are more than happy to test whatever they confiscate from you and prosecute you. And you know, and try to confiscate your car if you have some cash on you, they can say you're dealing or something like that. So it's like it's like two sides of the coin now. The big city DAs, police chiefs are like, we're not arresting people for this, but out in the hinterlands of Texas, it's still in full force. So that's the good guys and bad guys at the local level. And then at the legislature, we have won over the Texas House of Representatives. They are fully on board. Republicans and Democrats support medical marijuana. They support decrim. We're not quite there on legalizing, but they certainly do support decrim. So we have a tremendous support in the House of Representatives in Texas, Republicans and Democrats, to stop arresting people for possessing cannabis and to establish a real medical marijuana program. The bad guy and the very, 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 very bad guy is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, because he controls the Senate. The Lieutenant Governor is the most powerful man in Texas because he has total control of the Senate. Nothing moves in the Senate without his personal approval. And the Republicans have a supermajority over there in the Senate, and they keep changing the rules to give them keep total control. And so our problem is the Senate. That's the issue is one man, Dan Patrick, and then the police associations, the Sheriff's Association, the Police Chiefs Association, and CLEAT, Combined Law Enforcement Associations of Texas, who have a tremendous power and influence in Texas, and are part of Lieutenant Governor Patrick's base of support. So we're down to Lieutenant Governor Patrick and the police associations is the bottom line.
Wow. You know,
What do they got against veterans? What's this this lieutenant governor get against veterans? What's his problem? Why don't we use him as a punching bag?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, here I go. Watch out! But with these lawyers and cops start coming at veterans and telling us we don't know what the hell we're talking about, and they do. I mean, to me, they're just exercising their ignorance in public. And I just love to capitalize on that. You know, these police chiefs and stuff ought to realize probably that half the people working for them, men and women, are veterans. So, you know, I'm a police chief and I don't want you to use cannabis, and they're standing there going, I'd love to use cannabis. I got chronic pain. I got my own problems with Iraq or whatever. So they're counterproductive to themselves, I believe. But I don't know. I don't know what we can do about it, but I think that making an individual solely responsible for obstructing medical cannabis to veterans in Texas should be a real issue. And I don't know how many Texas voters there are that are veterans or that at least want to support us. I suspect that in Texas, a huge majority fill that number. And this guy ought to be reminded, you want to be the governor, you want to be a president someday, you're not going to do it by putting us down. And that's what he's doing. I hear his name. He's now not on my bad list. I'm going to get this guy somehow politically or intellectually or academically to understand that he's out of line.
Yes,
whatever his motivations are. Is out of line.
The good news on him
what does
is
the Texas medical community? What does the Texas medical community say about all this stuff?
Well, it's split. We have doctors who are actually prescribing medical cannabis under the Texas Compassionate Use Program. So that's a very good thing. But we have other doctors who are adamant that cannabis is not medicine. And they, tell the legislators, cannabis is not medicine. And some of them are legislators. We have doctors who are senators, several doctors who are senators, and they don't believe that cannabis is medicine. But we're winning that battle too, because we continue to recruit really good spokespersons from the medical community.
That I have this word I like to use. It's a big word and people think I'm smart. Ethnocentric. What you're hearing there from these people is an ethnocentric opinion. It's just an opinion. It has no basis in science. And by ethnocentric, I mean that they're talking about their particular belief from when they went to medical school 40 years ago and were not taught about this stuff. And if they open their eyes, they can see that in the pharmacopoeia of 27 countries in the world sits therapeutic cannabis. Real backward places like the United Kingdom and Spain and all Germany, all these places are just, dinosaurs right now. 27 countries are using therapeutic cannabis. And in Europe, it's distributed by the fourth largest drug company in the world, Merck. So, and then you've got the VA directive that Michael was so responsible for, which says right in it, you have it. It says that the physicians and other healthcare professionals that work in the VA system will treat cannabis as a medicine because it is a medicine. So you've got all this wisdom in the VA, part of the executive branch of the federal government, working for the president. The largest healthcare system in the world has declared cannabis a medicine. 27 other countries in the world agree with them. In Canada, our veterans like us get their therapeutic cannabis delivered to their house by FedEx. And these guys are saying it's not a medicine. They're morons. Yeah. And we've just got to call them that somehow. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I mean, that's the argument that I would against them, that they have an opinion based on bullshit. And we as veterans are actually talking about real science.
Yes, agreed. But
Michael, what's your wisdom?
No, finish, Dave, please.
No, I totally agree with Al. And you're just talking in Texas, when it comes to cannabis, you're talking years, decades of ignorance, going all the way back to 1913, when a person in El Paso, who was a Mexican person, went berserk one day and attacked a bunch of people on the street with a machete. And the police told the reporters that he'd been smoking marijuana all day. And that was the birth of the myth in Texas that marijuana causes violence and insanity. And that was ground zero in Texas. El Paso outlawed cannabis in their city, and blamed it on this Mexican man, and spread the word that Mexican people were using marijuana and attacking white people, and all these terrible lies. But that was ground zero in Texas. So we're trying to go back over that ground and wipe out all those lies and all that prejudice. And it's a big state with over 100 years of reefer madness. So it's a hard job.
Being a border state and being.
So is this guy Patrick still thinking that Mexicans are running around with machetes? I mean, what's his problem?
Well, Dan Patrick is a real mystery. But the good news on Dan Patrick is because number one, he's kind of the background on him is he's not a Texan. He came from out of state and ended up in Houston and owned a bunch of bars owned some bars in Houston, and became then became a Rush Limbaugh style right-wing radio personality, and used that as a springboard to politics. But he has this small inner circle, and nobody can penetrate it. But the good news is he's pissed off a lot of Republicans too, because cannabis isn't the only issue where he's where he is hard-headed. And so there's a lot of liberty-minded Republicans that have turned against him. So he's up for re-election in 2022, and we're hoping that either he'll get primaried by a Republican who will take him out in the primaries, or he will realize that his own party is turning against him, and he just won't run. He'll move on to whatever he's going to do next. But Dan Patrick.
If I'm correct, David, Texas has the second largest number of veterans of the states. I think only California has more veterans, maybe New York, but you're really in the top three. Yeah. That's a lot of votes. I mean, veterans can have a singular issue in this regard. You're talking about brothers and sisters. We can come together and get 100% of the vote. He needs to understand that. He's standing in front of us, and he just is in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's just got to get the hell out of the way. And I don't know how, you know, and I know, Mike and I know from experience that some of Mr. Patrick's women will listen to this show. I mean, the federal government listens to us because we infiltrate them too much, and they try to find out how we're doing it sometimes. We tell them we use friends, and they're very skilled people like David Bass to do our work for us in these places. But you know, they'll hear this conversation, and if they've got a brain, and they probably do, they'll convince this guy overnight to change his mind and be a hero of veterans instead of one that we're going to aim for some sort of political destruction. It's up to him. But I think his background is he sounds like he's a guy that likes to maneuver. Well, here's another turn to turn the wheel, you know. Mike, please join us. They don't even know you're out there.
I have kind of a warning for these guys, maybe a cautionary tale from what we've seen in Virginia, even. You know, Virginia, you know, we're the home of the DEA, we're the home of the Pentagon. You know, there's a lot of stuff in Virginia that would make you think we wouldn't be legalizing cannabis in the first half of the country, but somehow we are. And legalization goes into effect on July 1st. And two things I'll observe about what happened here in Virginia. One was that the testimony that was presented during the bills and you know, during the legislature, that was pretty much, I'd say 80, 90, 95% on the merits of decriminalization the previous year. So let me rewind a little bit. We had a bill on the legislative floor for like 6 years to decrim cannabis. And as soon as the legislature changed completely blue, you know, Democratic controlled House, Senate, and governor, that year we decriminalized cannabis. And once it became imminent, once that year unfolded in the legislature, the testimony was no longer about the merits of decriminalization. I didn't hear anybody talking about whether, you know, pro or con of decriminalization. It was all about the nuts and bolts of decriminalization. 95% of the people that got up there said that it didn't go far enough, that we needed to do more of this, needed to lower the fine. It was just absolutely amazing, like nothing I've ever expected or seen. And that's the, you know, the number one observation. But the second observation is the warning. The connected observation is that there was really no time or ability for people that had been staunchly opposed to this for all those years. They weren't even, you know, all these, this brick wall, we had this Republican, you know, brick wall, and it wasn't the Republican Party. I learned that years ago because I had a Republican leader in the House that was putting forth a bill, and still that same Republican brick wall stopped him from putting forth his own bill. So you know, it's somewhat of a brick wall within the Republican Party, but not representing the Republican Party. But that was there forever, just evaporated. It had no longer had any say in the process whatsoever that I could see. There was absolutely no substantive conversation from them in the process. And the process went from decrim. We went into the summer session with two big study bills that worked themselves out to create a whole big dossier of information on legalization, dropped that on the next legislative table. and they converted that into legalization in one session. Phenomenal. There was no time to get caught up. There was no time for learning curve. There was time to roll up your sleeves and get busy. And I didn't see any input from that Republican brick wall. They didn't get to be part of the new thing. See what I'm saying? If they want to be like structurally part of the future, and I'll finish by saying this. I can remember quite a few documents that I read that sort of were internal documents of the far right, religious right, or the police unions, or the narcotics officers association, whatever that I could find, where they would poll themselves. And in every single time, they would never say that they thought that they would actually stop legalization. They always thought that legalization was going to happen. They were just delaying legalization. None of them really actually thought that they were going to stop marijuana use or eradicate marijuana use. It was just the inevitability of legalization. So these guys already, somewhere in the back of their mind, even the most steadfast drug warriors in South Texas that have been doing it since 1913, they even, I think, in their soul know that this is not a sustainable thing, that prohibition will end and that legalization will happen. And it's just a matter of time. And they've been, that's their tactic. You could, as well as I do, delay. That's been their tactic. Delay is only a good tactic if it's going to actually work. If it doesn't work, I'm telling you, now that I've seen the flip side of it, it becomes a bad tactic when you're near the cusp of that new reality, because you're just blocked out.
Yeah, and the big new development is that New Mexico legalized cannabis. So now we've got another legal state on our border. Looks like Mexico is going to legalize cannabis. Of course, Colorado's a free state. Oklahoma has a fantastic medical program. Arkansas is getting their medical program squared away. Louisiana's slow, but they're coming along. So we're surrounded by states who are causing Texans to say, what the hell is going on? Because I can go right across the border and it's legal. And it looks like Oklahoma is going to allow out-of-state people to get a medical marijuana card. So that's putting a lot of pressure on Texas too. And we're very thankful for these states around us, and hopefully Mexico legalizes also.
So what do you think? What's your kind of, I mean, I always like to ask people in our interviews to sort of opine a little bit, maybe dream a little bit even, what would be the perfect scenario? How would you see it unfold in the future? What would be the best case for cannabis for military vets like you, like the others that you've gotten to know in Texas? How would the future of cannabis policy, how would it unfold to best suit your needs?
Well, it'll be very helpful if the Congress legalizes cannabis or deschedules cannabis at the federal level, because Governor Abbott always says, well, every other issue, he doesn't care what the federal government does, but on cannabis, for some reason, we can't modify our laws in Texas because it's federally illegal. So that's an excuse our governor uses. So it would be very helpful if the federal government deschedules cannabis. And then it would be the big thing for us would be if we can get rid of Dan Patrick, get him out of office in 2022, then things would definitely start falling into place because we have such bipartisan support, to include from the ultra-conservative Republicans who do believe what Ann Lee preaches, which is that the core principle of the Republican Party is to keep the government out of our personal lives. And the war cry of the Republican Party when they're against Obamacare, as it's called, is medical freedom. So we veterans picked up on that right away and said, hey, we want medical freedom too. So the federal government moving, the other states continuing to legalize cannabis all around Texas, and getting Dan Patrick out of the way is our three, the three things that will help us the most.
And Michael, maybe we could interview the lieutenant governor. Maybe he'd want to come on and talk to us about why he's so obstinate about having veterans use cannabis. I think we ought to at least ask him. Chances are he hasn't got the balls to show up.
He doesn't talk to anyone. He's impossible to get to. He has this palace guard around him, and even other Republicans can't get to him. He's a real cipher. It's a tough one.
Stuff like that under COVID is really tough too, because
sounds like an easy target to me. I don't know.
You don't have any real face-to-face time with people like you would, without COVID. That makes it much harder too. You can't.
Yeah, and of course, in Texas, we don't have ballot initiative. If we had ballot initiative, we would already solve this problem, like Oklahoma did. But when the Democrats had the power, they wouldn't allow ballot initiative, and now that the Republicans have the power, they won't allow ballot initiative. So ballot initiative is a dead issue in Texas. That's why we have to go through the legislature, and the legislative process is corrupt because the way the process works is it keeps all the power in the hands of about 15 legislators who have tremendous power, which is the lieutenant governor, the Speaker of the House, and the chairpersons of the committees, who are like gods and can decide what bills will or will not be heard. So in Texas, about 15 legislators have total power and control, and that's by design.
To me, Texas really is sort of synonymous with freedom in my mind, and I don't know, just picturing a handful of people out in Texas proudly, shooting at some targets out in the field or something like that with their cool guns, and then seeing some sticky little green plants and running like, elephants that saw mice. You know what I mean? It's like, come on.
Yeah, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. It makes our work hard because there's no logic to it.
No. So how can folks get involved in?
How many guys?
Go ahead, Al.
How many guys do you think commit suicide every day in Texas? How many vets?
Jeez.
Well, I think that it's directly proportionate to the national numbers, which is, I know that 2 of our Texas veterans for medical marijuana have committed suicide. So 2 of our veterans committed suicide, and there was no warning. I mean, it just happened out of the blue as far as their family and close friends were concerned. But it fits the pattern, of veterans who commit suicide. So that's hard for me to even talk about. We've lost 2 of our veterans to suicide.
In those cases that you,
I hear you, but when I hear these legislatures delaying, they want to put it off. It's kind of sickening. I mean, they know we're shooting ourselves, running cars into bridges. They know this is going on, and then they say, "Well, let's wait a few more years. Let's wait till this lieutenant governor gets in the way. By that time, only be, 700-800 more Texans kill themselves. But hey, what the hell, right?" Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, they just, one reason that over the years, Mike has gone out and been the public face of us, the 2 of us, is because I can't stand being near these people. I have post-traumatic stress myself from Vietnam, and I know damn well I get near these bastards. I just want them to go away. I just want to get rid of them, because to me, they're standing in the way of my brothers and sisters, and some of them, their life. That's pretty serious shit to be playing with. And it infuriates me that men like this guy, this lieutenant governor, aren't men. How the hell did he get there? He's no man. And so that just infuriates. That's why I can't go near him. Now, Mike, his wife tells him when he gets excited, he talks louder, and he does a lot. But I can't do that because I just have to not be there with these people. So I applaud you that you can do it. I know you've been some tough times, and obviously you've been in at least 2 bad conflicts, and that gives you post-traumatic stress. I understand. We're in the same neighborhood. And I remind people that are out there listening, veterans, friends of veterans, people that care about veterans, doesn't matter really whether all of us fought in Iraq or Vietnam where we did, or whether we fought for, the Roman Legion, I like to say. The results are the same for the warriors back then and now. But the difference is in the warriors in Rome, when they came back, they were taken care of. They were given honors. They were respected for the bullshit they put up with. We came back from Vietnam and we were ridiculed. And that will never leave me. And when I see this guy, Patrick, I hear that name. I'm back in 1971 when I came back here, infuriated by the reception I got. And this guy infuriates me. He's keeping people from staying alive, and he doesn't give a shit.
No, he does not.
I think that.
Well, see, I got another thing I've been saying for years is name him and shame him. Do it. Name this guy and shame him. Go to the press and say, what the fuck? Why don't you guys come on our side? You don't like veterans either? Houston, whatever your papers are. There's guys out there that will listen to you. And it's time to name this guy and shame him. Tell him to get out of the way before he kills more people.
I agree.
And if you take it to him like that, serious shit, and it is serious. This is the way it is. It's not makeup time. What he's doing is, and people that are backing him, they're making believe it isn't happening. It's our job as veterans to ensure that they know it is happening and to get the hell out of the way. Help us, don't hurt us. That's all we're asking. You gave us guns, big ships, planes to blow things up and kill people. Now we don't know enough how to take care of ourselves. We lived through all that shit. And so my message is to veterans, there's an old movie out there that says, I'm not going to take it anymore. Don't. Get up like this gentleman here from Texas, speak your mind as eloquently as he has, with the determination and the knowledge that he brought to the discussion, and we'll all do just great. Thanks for your work, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you for inspiring me.
I think that these guys are missing a lot from us. That we're out here working on medical cannabis access, and we've gotten to see how cannabis works together with other things. And we've got, really good insight into some of the things that the VA does wrong that actually makes our situations worse. And we've got good insight as to some of the things that the VA does right that helps us. And I've yet to come up with anybody, even those that have been as badly burned as some of the vets that we have been burned by the VA with some of the crazy antics that the VA hospitals have done to really, abuse some patients, frankly. Still the veterans will tell me that to get the best outcome, to prevent suicides, to prevent overdoses, you use all these benefits, all these different treatments that are available in concert, that you have the availability of the mindfulness training and the counseling and the even various medications that the VA has, but then you augment that carefully with good cannabis. And good cannabis, I mean, not just good quality medicinal grade cannabis, but in the proper amount. And I would be skeptical that the veterans that you're working with across Texas are really on average working with the right amounts. It's very difficult until it's actually legal where you are to the cost winds up being prohibitive. The logistics of getting it become prohibitive. And we've got veterans out in California and other places that range wildly in the amount of cannabis that they use, from a little tiny bit, a little once in the evening, to constantly offsetting symptoms throughout the day with a very, very large amount of extracts and things that aren't widely available in the black market, and some of them aren't even available in the recreational market. And this is yet another battleground that we have to fight to make sure that as we create adult regulated markets, they don't supersede and eliminate the medicinal access points that we were able to get the proper medicines from, the proper dosages, the right kind of varieties of cannabis, whatever. So we have hurdles. Once you get out of the box you're in, you're going to be in another set of hurdles that we need to work with. I really, I feel that there would be a much better outcome, that we could help really lower the suicide rate. This is something that we haven't really gotten good science on yet. The VA is looking at conflicting data, where they've got information from psychiatrists that say that polydrug abuse is indicated in suicide. It's part of the cause of suicide. And that's probably true. So you have to filter the abuse side away from the medicinal side. And that's not easy to do when everything is seen as abuse by the system, essentially, because it's illegal under the federal law. And that's what we try to do, I think, without even talking about it, is we do try to look at medicine and try to separate that from abuse ourselves and individually and collectively. And there is a big difference. There's a huge difference, whether you're using cannabis as just a drug in part of a pattern of drug abuse, or whether you're using it in pursuit of a benefit and trying to, see the reduction in your symptoms or your increase in your overall quality of life. So anyway, that's my rant for today. I appreciate you listening. But David, tell us how people can get more involved, and maybe websites or anything that you might have you want to share. This is maybe a good time for that.
Well, our Facebook page is Texas Veterans for Medical Marijuana. So veterans should follow that page. That we post our events and information there. Veterans always suggest that veterans should consider joining Texas NORML because they're the primary sponsor of our veterans work. And so once they're plugged into Texas NORML, then they learn about all of our events, to include our veteran events. And then I tell people, if you're on social media, if you're on Facebook, friend me, because 99% of everything I post on my personal Facebook page has to do with veteran events and actions in Texas. So our mission, our focus is getting our message to every veteran in Texas. That's what we consider to be our message. Our mission is to make sure that every veteran in Texas learns the message that cannabis is good medicine, and that they are able to talk to other veterans who have knowledge about medical cannabis. And so that's the focus of our work, is just getting that message out there by any means we possibly can, so that veterans know there is an alternative to pills.
Hey, just one last question before you go. Has anybody ever told you that with your music background, you could be a stand-in for ZZ Top?
Yeah, I hear that all the time. They're my favorite bands.
I thought so.
Yeah, I love.
You still playing? You still play an instrument?
No, I once I joined the Army, I never touched the drums again. I just enjoy seeing other guys play the drums, and gals too. But my 25 years in the Army, that consumed me 100%. So I had to kind of withdraw from that military mindset too. That's a challenge.
So anything else you might want to say?
I did. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to leave it open to you, Dave, if there's anything else that you might want to say or share with the folks before we close here today.
Well, I just want to say, I started off by saying how much you and Al encouraged me and showed me the path toward medical cannabis way back in 2012, 2013, when I was trying to find my way. I felt like I was all alone and in Texas, in this gigantic state of Texas. And now, it's 2021, And man, I'm in contact with veterans all over the United States. The Veteran Action Council fired up last year. And so it's just a tremendous blessing and inspiration for us veterans in Texas to see what all the other veterans and all the other states are doing. And as you said, Michael, to realize that in Virginia and California, in Colorado, the work is never done. You know, it's like you never achieve the perfect medical situation. And so you just have to keep working and working and working. And so that's very inspirational for us veterans in Texas who are still using cannabis illegally and taking all these risks to see where we can get. And also we're all still striving to push it even further, you know, and eventually we'll all meet at the top of the mountain. But you guys lead the way in states like Virginia and other states, and you show us where we can get, and that our work is not hopeless.
You have something else, Al?
No, I just want to thank you again for being our guest. It was a great time, David. Again, folks, it's David Bass from Texas, and now we'll be here on Facebook. You can see this just about any time you want now, and so please tell your friends, please tell other veterans of the interview and about Veterans Voices and the fact that we'll be here every other week, and we'll just keep compiling these interviews. For all the vets out there, their caregivers, their friends, their loved ones to look at, to learn from, and to get some idea like David did that you guys aren't alone out there. Somebody's got your six. Everybody out there, somebody's got your six. This is Al Byrne. You take care.
And Michael Krawitz, Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access. And as David pointed out, we're all part of this Veterans Action Council. If you're interested in learning more about the Veterans Action Council or becoming involved or trying to reach David or me, feel free to check us out and give us a contact either on the Facebook page where you're looking at this video, or we're also going to be posting this on YouTube for posterity. And thanks to everybody for joining us on a Sunday morning. It's beautiful, sunny Sunday, and much love, and hopefully you have a great rest of your day and this week. You're muted.